Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday morning real estate marketing show with RuthieRocks, Ruth Allbrand, and I am Marketing Max. This is show number 296. Ruth is about to break the 300 mark this week.
Yeah.
So today, actually, we're going to revisit a very important topic here, especially here in real estate as the market starts heating up. And as more and more transactions happen, there's obviously more opportunities for the scrupulous to come in and take over and do some bad things regarding cybersecurity. So we're going to have Jack Lindberg. We've had him on before, talk to us about cybersecurity today. But before we do that, Ruth, what is happening in Las Vegas?
Well, it's like I keep saying, the homes are like toilet paper. They're flying off the shelf. It's interesting that, let's see, where did my stats go? There they are. And we're going to hide you and bring you back. There you go. So these are the stats as of today. And the good news is that we're ahead of last September by 222 homes sold in the first more in the first 12 days. So last September, month to date, we sold 1,065, and last September it was only 843. So we're going at about 107 homes a day closing.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty cool. And the median price is 335, so it's gone up as well. So
335 now?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the median.
We're getting up there, Ruth.
I know. I don't like it.
Right?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Slow down just a little bit here. We need more people listing their homes at this point.
Well, you know, we had 140, or let's see, 210 just listed yesterday. So that's good. That keeps us in the 1.8, 1.9 months of available inventory, which we love. We don't want it to get below 1.5 because it just gets messy then with multiple offers and price wars and agents, you know, getting upset with each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, the influx of probably Californians, especially now with the fires that are going on right now. I heard from one of my other property management friends that, you know, rental applications have skyrocketed right now.
Yeah. Yes.
It's, you know, that's good news for the market in real estate here because we have an influx of people moving here.
Yes. Yeah, it's amazing. We put a rental on one day and it's gone the next day, literally.
Wow.
I mean, we have one available right now, and that's only because it's overpriced.
What's medium rents right now? I mean,
well, I haven't really done the stats on it, but what I heard from the ladies in the class the other day, they said about 1,400.
Okay.
Yeah. So that, you know, you can buy a home and $300,000 home, and you're under 1,100. So not counting, principal and interest. So so that's where we are, and the market is just hot. It's just hot, which makes everybody happy. And this week I reviewed an economic forecast, and they said that the interest rate is probably going to stay the way it is for the next 16 months.
Absolutely. Yeah, the Federal Reserve is not moving rates at all.
Right.
Next 6 months, 16 months, and they've increased their target inflation rate. It used to be, you know, trying to keep it at 2%, and if it like touches 2% or higher, then the Fed starts getting nervous and starts raising rates. But Jerome Powell said, you know, 3 weeks ago, he's not going to do that anymore. I mean, core inflation's been at 2%, while debt has increased, and obviously unemployment's been super low. So raising targets to maybe 2.5%, maybe 3%. Before they start getting nervous. So that means low rates for the foreseeable future, which could be the wild card that keeps real estate going.
Yes. And the only thing that I worry about is that the prices will go up a little more, and then the rents will be less expensive than the principal and interest. So that, but we'll see. You know, I don't think they're going to go up too much higher. At least I'm praying.
I'm hearing little rumblings of slowing down right now. I'm actually going through a refinance of my house right now as well, and there's several homes listed in my community of the exact same model, and they're not coming in. They're listing it super high, right? They're trying to capture the market right now, but they're not getting the asking price like it was 2-3 months ago. So
right, exactly.
I mean,
but go ahead.
Yeah, I think we've hit that point.
Yeah,
we're there. We're the line is right there, because once you and I have talked about for years, right? My metric is 5 to 6 times medium household income as a medium home price in any type of democratic community. I mean, that you've hit that upper band where affordability becomes a problem.
And the inventory on the new homes is really low right now. It's down at 200. There's 200 right now standing inventory.
Wow,
in the whole valley. That's
the whole valley. There's only 200. Wow.
Yeah, and there's 672 in progress. So we, and those numbers kind of fit last year. And what happened, the reason why they're so low and they're going lower is because they've increased 20%, the new home sales. Have increased, from last year. They were 800 a month last year, 800 resale or sales, and then now they're up to 1,100, 1,200. Wow. So these numbers are really, they are low. Yeah.
It's good to see that they've gotten more strategic in their inventory and builds, from their lessons learned in the 2008 financial crisis.
Yeah. So Jack said he went to eat breakfast. Jack, we're waiting for you. Are you there? I can hear you, but I can't see you. Okay, because we are now bringing you on. There you are.
There you are.
No, I didn't.
What's happening, Jack?
I didn't go anywhere. I was like snarfing my breakfast really quick.
Jack, is the Wi-Fi on your phone on? Because your internet is really slow.
It is. Hold on.
Yeah, turn it off.
He's got 18 layers of security.
It is off, actually. So the Wi-Fi on my phone's off.
Huh. So your internet, is anybody else on the internet in your house?
Possibly. Can
they get off? Possibly.
Well, his audio is not bad, Ruth.
Okay.
I mean, that's really the most important thing. So
yeah, who cares about my face? You might want to just cut me out.
No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
My value is not in my face. It's knowledge,
right? Right. Yeah. So we're going to talk about cybersecurity, and I pulled up a pretty interesting stat that by 2021 there will be 3.5 million unfilled cybersecurity jobs. So if anybody's looking for a job, this might be the genre to get a job. That's
definitely. It's definitely a super growing area, just like the crime is growing, right? So they're going to have more and more jobs on that. Fighting the crime, if one thing, but just setting people up properly.
Yes.
I mean, look at how casually up till now the real estate industry has taken cybersecurity, and of course now we're out spreading the word, so people are starting to be more aware.
Yeah. So I had another stat here that the hackers attack every 39 seconds on average. That's 2,244 times a day.
There's another stat. You know how malware, there's little programs they write to try to insert into your computer, trick you to downloading it, whatever. There's many variations of it. But there's a stat I heard recently that said that there's over 500,000 of those created daily worldwide.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm getting a ton more phishing type of emails here. They're getting more and more deceptive and creative with their wording, and I had one the other day. It was like I think either your login to your Netflix. Someone logged into your Netflix. And then I, looked at the actually to from, I go through training through my work through cybersecurity. I always look at the key features, and like Netflix was spelled with a capital I, or like it was some iteration where the one letter was off, and I'm like, wow, it's pretty good. If you don't pay attention, and if you're just click, especially with us, living in this digital age where we're just scrolling at 1 a.m. in the morning, right, or 3 a.m. when we're tired, and we're like, oh no.
Yeah, no, that's what I mentioned about, one of the common stories out there about Gmail and some of those free email services is people will just go out and get a one-letter variation of your Gmail and then email your clients and try to trick them into doing things. And of course, the clients come back and sue the agent and the broker and everybody else. So that's why we say not to use the Gmail address straight up. You can use the system. You can use. Oh, and by the way, I was talking to GoDaddy, and through Office, I think it's Office 365 or whatever. The Microsoft has an email system. You have to pay for it, but you can get an email system through GoDaddy for your email that's secured, and it's through Microsoft. Microsoft, they said, has the best secure email system for taking your domain name and doing your name at your domain name or whatever. So GoDaddy can set all that up. It doesn't cost too much, especially considering the prevention value of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. 57% of the companies are experiencing phishing attacks. I mean, it's huge. I mean, and the healthcare industry is being one of the hardest hit right now.
Well, the COVID thing, people taking advantage, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah, people asking you for your information, like they're the unemployment department. All kinds of scams are going on with those types of things.
Well, and all that's new, so people really don't know what's true or what's not.
Right.
So there's more room to trick them with something they make up.
Yeah, and 53% of these companies had over 1,000 sensitive files open to every employee. So that's another thing that companies need to think about. I know in our brokerage, we have a separate, we have a server. So every agent has their own separate private piece of that server that nobody can get into without a username and password. So we've been doing that since the late 90s. Me being in the computer industry for so long, and as well as you have, Jack, I mean, we've been aware of cyber breaches for, forever. People hacking into computers, and now they're hacking into your Wi-Fi, and there's just so many areas where you have to be careful. You can't even go into Starbucks and log on to the Wi-Fi there, right?
Well, it's funny because, our class, as great as it is, 3 hours of CE ethics credits and all that beautiful stuff, 3 hours is just enough to kind of touch on everything.
Yeah.
Because there's so many touch points in the transaction that are potentially hackable, from routers to phones to laptops to whatever. And all the people involved in the transaction each have those types of devices too. So we don't have time to actually cover all the details on that. We cover the key points, and then from there we talk about the designation, all that stuff. But there's a lot to it because the industry has just kind of not dealt with it for so long that there's a lot of catching up to do. And anyone who hasn't taken the class really needs to at least get that part done.
Well, and one of the things I think that maybe we've done a disservice, we being the brokers, is we've concentrated on the wire fraud issue as if it's the only issue. And it's just one of many issues that have to do with cyber hackers and cyber security. And our E&O carrier has strongly suggested that we have cyber insurance. And I think it's going to be mandatory next coming period than when we re-up our E&O insurance. So it's a big thing.
It's a huge transaction that, like, the transfer of sensitive information is so rampant in this business. I can't believe it is unfathomable that it hasn't been more of a focus for a very long time, because there's a lot of sensitive data that gets transferred back and forth here. Yeah, I think if anyone takes one thing away from today's show is if you still have a Sally Sally sells Vegas at gmail.com as your email, go out and buy a domain. Go to GoDaddy. Go to, at a minimum, use your broker's email server for the time being, because one, it doesn't look professional, and two, you're just opening yourself up to attacks at this point.
And I read it. Go ahead.
I was going to say, once if you go and get your name like RuthAllbrand.com, and then your email address should be Ruth@RuthAllbrand.com. Just that should be it, and not using Gmail. I mean, we've never used Gmail.
It's something I've been teaching for almost 20 years now in classes I've written. Is if you have like Jack@JackLindbergh.com, it's the easiest, because if they learn your name, then they know that's your name. They can remember that. And if you give them an email address with your domain, you're also giving them their domain. So they're, anybody with half a brain's going to go, wait a minute. So JackLindbergh.com is his website. I think I'll go check that out.
Yeah, right.
And then they're searching for homes.
It's a great point, Jack.
So I was going to bring up a point. I got a kind of a frantic call yesterday from a broker who all of a sudden their email stopped working for their domain. And I kind of helped them really kind of Band-Aid it together the last time. I wanted to reset everything up, and they're like, no, just kind of make it work and don't worry about, any upgrades or whatever. So now somebody apparently
trying to make it work.
they've had their domain for over 20 years. Somebody forgot to renew it. And so when it renewed, when they did finally renew it the last day, it had expired, and then they renewed it, and all the settings got reset. All these settings, I worked hard to try to figure out how to, put this, connect that with that. It was like, it was a mess. So they're calling me frantically yesterday. And here's my point to this, is that their email's down. Their clients are calling during this COVID period saying, are you out of business? And they're like, no. Their domain doesn't work. Their email doesn't work. And it's really a result of them passing off understanding how to do some of this stuff to others for so long that they have no clue. And so they're just kind of at the mercy of whoever's happens to be around that can help them at the time and whatever. It's just, the bottom line is, in real estate, there is a certain level of knowledge of technology you just have to have and keep up with. You can't hire someone else to do everything constantly and just stay out of touch. You have to understand a certain level, or you're going to end up in a bad situation at some point.
I hear a lot of agents now talking how they have to get technical. And I'm saying you don't have to get technical. You just have to learn a little bit about technology. It's not hard. Riding a bike looked hard till you got on it and rode it. And technology is not that difficult.
Well, and it's funny because a lot of times someone would come to me, the techie, and it's like, I'm only techie. I just turned 55. I'm only techie at my age because I work at it, and it's what I do, right? So otherwise, I'd be just as clueless as anybody else probably. But a lot of what I run into is they'll say, oh, I don't know what to do, help me out here. And I'll go and I'll read the screen and go, well, it says to do this. Let's do this. Oh, it says to do this. Let's do this. And really, that's what it takes half the time, is just look at what they're telling you and read it. But we tend to want to skim and find the easy, quick answer all the time. That's human nature. And so, that's where half the problem comes from, is just take the time to figure it out for yourself.
What is a rootkit? ROOTKIT.
Oh, now you're talking like
malware.
No, I mean it's a level like, I couldn't define this accurately because it's been so long since I've even heard the term. You're better off Googling it. Let's put it that way.
Because I understand that, well, phishing and rootkits and injection attacks, I guess that's malware, right?
It's part of it, yes.
Yeah.
So last time you gave us some statistics on like password lengths and things of that nature. So I just have a quick question for you here, Jack, about our the company I work for is just implemented a massive redesign of our password system, and instead of using just I think like 8 characters. Now they're using like long paraphrases with, obviously numerical capitalization and different asterisk numbers. So, I mean, is there a benefit in increasing the length of the password?
Not if you do it purely. For example, there was a thinking for a while that length was just the most important thing. So they came out with this idea that maybe 4 random words. So there was a common lesson out there a couple of years ago that said, here's an example: correct horse battery staple. It's random words, but you can kind of image that in your mind. You can see a staple inside a battery and a horse looking at it going, that's a battery staple. Yeah, you're correct. So that was the example they gave as a way to have a long password you could remember. The problem is there's algorithms out there that take words out of the dictionary and move them around and whatever. So it's not just about length. It's about I'm going to blank out here now. There's a term for it, but it's basically the difficulty of remembering it, and etymology. So the idea is that it's about being more complicated and more unpredictable, right?
Right.
So bottom line is the rule I give in the class is if you can remember your password, then it's hackable.
Right. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, if you can remember it off the top of your head, then it's probably hackable.
I mean, I promote the idea of a password manager because then all my passwords now, I have hundreds of passwords. They're all gobbledygook. I never have to type any of them because the password manager is always there waiting for me to try to log into something. And it's like, here you go. Here's your password. But then that begs the question, okay, what about the password manager? Can it be hacked, right? That's the first thing everybody thinks of. Well, obviously they work on their security as well. And I have one master password. What should that be? So I make that one really long, complicated thing. And I had to work to remember it. But now I can remember it.
So that brings up a question for me too. Like, if you have a Mac, sometimes it generates a password for you, right?
Keychain, yeah.
Do you recommend using that at all, or do you just?
Well, if it generates one of those weird gobbledygook passwords, sure, use the password. The system keychain is decent in the sense of how it works and all that. But still, for example, my laptop, if I can crack the password on my laptop, I'm into keychain just like that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, is that a lot of us take the laptop password we have kind of easy because we have to type it in every time to get into our laptop. So we tend to want to make that one easier too. Whereas when you're using a system like LastPass, it makes you think, oh, this is my password database. I better take it more seriously. I kind of like the separation, if you will. And LastPass also never knows, and most of the password managers, they never know your actual password. They iterate it before they ever get it. And so a rogue employee could never, look at a list of passwords and, leave the company and go do something. It's just not an option. So LastPass to me is like the best solution right now. Hopefully we get to better ones down the road because there's still vulnerabilities, but human nature is probably our biggest vulnerability.
Yeah. This little chart up here says the flower's hiding it, but it says 61% of companies have over 800 accounts with non-expiring passwords. That's bad too. I mean, unless you use, what is it, 1Pass? Obviously, I don't use it.
Well, there's a bunch of password managers out there, and they're generally the same type of idea.
Yeah.
Non-expiring passwords are bad because it doesn't remind you to renew or change them on a regular basis, but you don't want to change them too often either. There's some systems that are trying to constantly tell you to change the password, and a lot of times we'll change it. I know, again, a real estate broker who, as part of a brand system, they were forced to change their password once a month. So they would just take the old password and add another number on the end. And that would be their next month's password. And they just keep doing that until it wouldn't let them do it anymore. Then they go back to the beginning and cycle it back around. And that creates a predictability that criminals eventually can figure out if they're really watching you or stalking you. And as a broker, you're worth a lot of money to a criminal. So you have access to lots of transactions and lots of money action and whatever. So brokers have to be especially careful.
Yeah. And one of the things, I'm going to put this down for a second here. One of the things that I think is very interesting in the class is how easy it is for people to stalk someone. And you gave the example last month about looking for, not Googling, but on Facebook, I think you put in the search term cash buyer.
Mm-hmm.
You want to
Just two
address
words.
that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's one of my favorites. So back in 08, 09, I decided after our real estate roller coaster we were on there, I decided to write some books, right? So I wrote Facebook for real estate, LinkedIn for real estate. I have a real estate background, so I wanted to write it from that perspective. In that sense, I got really familiar with Facebook before most people and figured out a lot of little tricks. Well, one of them is, you can search for keywords and you'll see people's posts with those keywords in it. And so as I got into cybersecurity, I was thinking about wire transfers and all that. So as part of my class, I thought, well, let me see how many people come up when I type cash buyer into Facebook. And of course, a bunch of posts come up. Hey, I have a cash buyer, $700,000 in this neighborhood. Anybody know of a property? Blah, blah, blah. And of course, most of these posts are made publicly. They're not made under any sort of list, which we talk about in our class, etc. So anyone can see them. I just go sign up for a fake Facebook account, type cash buyer, and I can start to see all these posts. And then, of course, I click on the realtor's profile, and I've got all their info. I start to stalk them because I'm thinking, hey, if they've got a $700,000 cash buyer, that money's going to have to move at some point. I want to see if I can get in the middle of that.
And that's a big ticket, 700 grand.
Yeah, and here's the realtor announcing it. Hey, here I am. So I tell realtors you have to be very careful about how you do those types of things. Instead of this random shotgun thing, put your friends in lists and then you start doing it that way. It's much more effective anyway. And so, yeah, we cover that.
So how do you feel? I know Facebook's coming out with new terms of service here on October 1st, right? Everybody got a message on their Facebook link. Have you dug into that a little bit here, Jack?
Not yet. I was digging into Microsoft's and I was laughing because Microsoft's, of course, is several pages like everybody else. And then, of course, there's other sub-agreements, privacy agreement. Oh, there's another several pages, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, what fraction of what percent of people actually try to read this? I think the only people that ever read these terms of services are the lawyers.
Yeah, the people that wrote them.
and really, it's probably different departments doing different sections. So I don't know if any one lawyer has ever read the whole thing either.
Right.
It's ridiculous. And yet they put crazy stuff in those terms of services that you might not think of. For example, Google Drive and all the stuff that's in there. You've got Google Docs and Word and all these things. Imagine if J.K. Rowling had written Harry Potter in Google Drive. Google would own it.
Google would own it. That's right. Just like Dropbox, I tell people don't use it because anything you put in there is owned by Dropbox.
And a lot of that has to do with them covering their own. They're just trying to make sure that, okay, we have control over this. If something turns out to be bad or negative or whatever, we have the right to do what we want with it, delete it,
right,
whatever. So I think there's some of that as part of the thinking behind that. But in the end, it's just they can get away with it. So why not? And I remember listening to a cybersecurity audiobook, and the person that wrote the book said, look, there was a point to where the auto industry, I think it was in the 50s, there was a lot of deaths. And then there was this coalition put together with the public and the government that forced the auto industry to get better at safety. And so they started doing better seat belts and better, they came up with airbags and all these things. And now safety is so much better. And this author suggested that has to happen in the internet. Force Google, Microsoft, all these companies to get better at their security, and then we can get better at ours, and blah, blah, blah. So that was the thinking behind that.
There was a big change on Facebook that I think is going to affect a lot of people, especially in real estate, is they're forcing people to use actually their names. I guess, I don't know, they're going to go through some type of authentication process where, you can't use a name like Sally Sells Vegas as a, personal Facebook page name. And so, that's going to be interesting, because I know there's a lot of people with like 2, 3, 4, 5 different accounts that they use for different things. And I wonder how that's going to like shape down that
Well, what they've started to do already is if they find out that you have two personal accounts, you're shut down.
Hmm.
And it takes an act of God to get back.
Oh, wow.
My personal opinion, because of the Facebook, the way it's set up, it should only be allowed that you have one personal account. You can have as many pages or groups as you want, but you should only have one personal account.
Well,
now,
you know-
there's personal privacy that kind of comes into play there.
Why?
Well, because if Facebook authenticates you and your page, right, then they know for sure it's you. You can't pretend anything, right? It's really you. And to the point where I think, like China, it could be used as something against you eventually. Your personal profile, if it's verified and guaranteed that it's you. There's a certain safety to the anonymity or to the lack of accountability at some point. So there's a balance there that I don't think we want to go all the way down that road of, yes, I've proven, I sent in my driver's license or whatever they're going to do or however they do it to verify that this is really me doing this page, right?
So what they did to me, Jack, because I was one of those people that had to be authenticated because someone was trying to hack into me all the time, every day. So they wanted me to show them I was a real person. I had to take a picture of my passport, my driver's license, give them my social security number, and they gave me a FedEx, or no, they allowed, how did I get it to them? I think there was a private place on Facebook that they took it. Then they FedExed me a code in a FedEx package to make sure that I was the person at this address. And I couldn't get back on until, I gave them that code. And now I'm authenticated.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a process, and I was down for 2 or 3 days, which was like, taking my food away.
A lifetime, right?
Well, and there's pros and cons. There really are. With everything, there's a balance. There's good and bad. I mean, in my class, I always talk about the idea of back in the 70s when I was a kid, we took a field trip and we go to one of those computers that's like you dial in and it's like, then you plug in a little rubber thing and then it goes to the mainframe and all that kind of stuff. And back then, so few people had access that there was accountability. Everyone knew, okay, I used so-and-so's login to get in, whatever. There's very few people. So the information that was on there was legit, right? It was accountable. Yeah. Now anyone can do anything and pretend they're anybody. And so a lot of the information you see on the internet is questionable, right? You have to verify everything you see and say, oh, okay, I see that. That sounds true, but I better double check.
Yeah.
And so there is validity to having accountability.
Yes, and the property management software that we use has accountability. It's an online system, and it's secure. And whoever is making an entry into the accounting system, it dates and times it and says who did it, which is really good because nobody wants to admit they made a mistake, right? But it's right there.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, there was an actually interesting documentary on Netflix. I forgot what it was called, but basically, the guy documented his like online romance with this person that he thought was this attractive young lady. They ended up scheduling some time to meet, and it ended up being like this 45, 50-year-old woman with a family who's pretended to be this person, this young lady. She like basically trolled and put all the pictures of this young lady to build a cohesive story. I mean, like she was living that young lady's life and developed this romance, and this whole documentary kind of came in place. So it was pretty interesting, pretty scary at the same time, that how people can really, if they put enough effort into build an entirely different profile that looks legit.
Yeah.
Well, there's a whole dark underbelly that operates that way. Pedophiles do that. They pretend they're other young kids and they trick young kids into doing stuff. And it's a horrible world. And, one day when we get the detective on, we'll probably hear a few of those stories. Real life stories of things that are going on behind the scenes. a lot of us take the internet for granted. We think, oh, it's just a computer screen, and as soon as I close the computer, it's over or whatever. No, there's people out there, and I talk about one guy in my class, how you word that is important. In my class, I talk about one guy in Philadelphia who was arrested because he was gathering, information about realtors. He was stalking realtors, and he had a whole diary full of information he was gathering on social media. And it's not like Ruth said, it's not just about wire transfer fraud. It's about personal safety. It's about identity theft. There's a lot of issues that happen and can happen with mishandling of key information online.
Well, the gal, was she in Alabama that got killed because she was stalked on social media?
Arkansas, yeah, Arkansas.
Arkansas. That's close.
Yeah.
So tell that story.
Oh, Beverly Carter, yeah. No, she made the mistake of going out with a couple and ending up in some remote places alone with this couple, and they kidnapped her. And over time they were holding her, and somehow she died in captivity. I don't know exactly how it happened, but she died. And then, of course, now her son's out teaching like personal security stuff. And that in that scenario, it was a lot about being careful who you work with, knowing who you work with before you go out and you trust yourself. A lot of times they think, there's a thought that maybe, my thought is, one time I lived in Mexico City for a few years. There was one time this 3 kids, kind of mid-20s, came, and they tried to rob me, right? Girlfriend and I, and stuck a gun in my back. And it's funny, I like to tell the story that I spun around and took the gun out of his hand so fast I don't even know what I did. I was standing there looking down at my hand, and it wasn't a real gun. It was a plastic gun. And when I had grabbed it, I crushed it. So it was just a bunch of pieces of plastic in my hand. They're speaking Spanish around me, and I'm not quite fluent on Spanish at this point. So I'm like, what's going on here? And then I figure out what's happening. And of course, I chase them off. I'm not a small person, so I don't know what they were thinking in the first place. But the thought that there was a girl, 2 guys and a girl, and you think, oh no, this is okay. There's a girl there, and I think she might have been thinking, well, this is a couple, and it just seems like women are less involved in crime than men. I mean, not to be whatever on that, but it just seems that way, and I think maybe that was part of why she trusted them and went out. But a lot of this can happen now. This happened to her by going out and showing remote homes. We've probably all been taught now that. And to lock the office door at night, if you're in the office alone, stuff like that. But now we're at a point where in many counties, many jurisdictions around the country that hold property records, if I know your name, Facebook, and I know the county you live in, Facebook, or even LinkedIn for that matter, I can just go to the county assessor and look up where you live if you own your property. And it shouldn't be that easy. So there are some counties that are wising up, but...
Yeah, I don't know why it's that easy. Like literally, we can all look each other addresses on the public record, which is great. But shouldn't you have a license? Shouldn't you have authority of some sort?
Accountability, right?
Right. To pull those records, like so that they're recorded, and like every time that record's pulled, they Ruth's security system that it timestamps and shows who's looking at it. And
I'm sure the detective would love that kind of system. Make his job a lot easier.
Yeah.
Right here in Clark County, I do that all the time. When we do the class and somebody signs up for the Sci-Pro designation, part of that is I do a little report on them. I go online and I look like a criminal at their stuff to say, okay, if I were a criminal, these are things I could take advantage of. One of the first things I do is go to the county records and see if I can find where they live. And most of the time I'm successful. The last one, they had their property in a trust, but they named the trust after themselves. So it didn't provide any more level of difficulty, But that's one of the solutions is put your property in a trust and name it something else, not related to you.
Well, and the other thing about them finding where you live, they also get the signature on your deed of trust, and now they have your signature.
Another identity theft issue.
Right.
Yeah, and so some counties are wising up, like Alameda County, Cook County, where you go to their database and it says, look, you can look up a property by property ID number or a bunch of other things. But if you want to search by name, you have to come into the office to do it. And that makes sense to me too. At least maybe there's cameras there or something, but there's at least an extra step. You can't do it from anywhere in the world, right?
You can't do it from China.
So,
I mean,
or Nigeria or Russia, which are big, hotbeds of malware and phishing and all that stuff. A lot of cybercrime coming from certain countries, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe you have a separate security system for escrow officers or loan places that to do verification during the transaction process. I understand why they keep it public, because the transaction slows down if they have to do another step, but there should be some type of licensing, some type of testing and registration for people who are accessing that data. I always thought that was very weird, actually, when I'm like, you can just look up by name and know exactly where people live. I'm like, that's...
To that point, Max, in property management, we're licensed and we have the ability to pull someone's credit report. And of course, we use the online system that we have, and they give us, the lowdown on the person, the public records, whatever, and the credit scores. But owners of properties think they're entitled to have that credit report. I mean, that's one of and we've got the disclaimer that says we are not permitted to disclose confidential information to a third party. And but for the longest time it was difficult before all this identity theft and things. I'm talking, maybe 20 years ago, it was really difficult to deal with the owners. They just insisted on having it, and we insisted they couldn't. And then, of course, if we printed it out, we shredded it. People just don't understand that casual giving someone a credit report, that could be someone who's going to go stalk this person in the future, or maybe they didn't, maybe they didn't rent the property. And so, I mean, things are so...
Not only that,
I think my personal information should be under my lock and key, not public record. And
if you receive the credit report, you stepped in the chain of liability for yourself as an owner, right? I mean, it's not even worth it, right? And so, yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned shredding documents, and of course, another technique people have used that's been around for a long time is dumpster diving, because a lot of people just throw their bills in the garbage, and then people will dig in there and they'll get information about account numbers and all that kind of stuff, and that can add up to problems too.
And people don't understand that when they scan things into a computer, that they're retained on a hard drive on that copier, I should say, scanned into a copier. And so if you get rid of a copier, you need to wipe that hard drive clean, because it's filled with information if you're a real estate company or a mortgage company or a bank.
Right. And again, something most people just don't think about. You don't think about it.
No, absolutely. All right. So we got 13 minutes left here, more like 8. But any last words, Jack, before we end the show here?
Well, I mean, this is a long and deep subject. Now, we're talking about the county records and all that kind of stuff. Now, I've gone to the Real Estate Commission, spent time in their meetings, and I've convinced them that cybersecurity should be required as part of licensing. So we're that far.
We're getting there.
I thought, well, okay, now the next step is I should go to the county commissioners meetings and convince the county to stop putting the name search on their website, because they just updated their website recently and nothing has changed in terms of, in fact, the property search is probably easier now in terms of just general, but the name is part of that. So it's a long process, and it's like each state, I've talked to several states in terms of real estate licensing. Each one has their own people with their own mentality, and the education has to occur in each case in a unique and different way too. So it's difficult, and the sad part is most people aren't going to take this subject seriously until it happens to them, until after it happens to them, and then they're going to go, oh, I wish I would have known. And we're over here going, well, we've been holding this class for however long, right? So it's really important for people to stop and think about what you're doing, And, you know, it's CE Club credits anyway, but just take the time to take this class if you haven't, because it's going to introduce you to really key subjects and issues that you're probably not doing properly now that will cover 50, 60, 70% of the issues that could happen. And then if you want to go further, there's opportunities to take another online class, to sign up for the designation, whatever, that will educate you further on what kind of data is out there on you with Facebook or with Google, because Facebook and Google are gathering every movement you make that they can track, and it's all out there, right? Now you have the ability to log in and look at a lot of this stuff. Google will track everywhere you are on this planet. If you have an Android phone it's automatic. And so there's a lot of information within your account that if you know where to go, you can look this stuff up. So if a criminal hacks your Google account or your Facebook, they have access to all this stuff that you might not even know is there. Your messaging chat, if you're messaging through Facebook or doing Facebook chat, everything you say there is stored. Now you can go in and delete all that stuff, but you have to know how. And if you don't, again, a criminal that hacks your Facebook can go in and look at all that history and, again, possibly learn things about clients or whatever. So there's a lot of stuff that we do that we've been doing for a long time, and we just don't think about, you know, the potential consequences until it's too late.
Well, a lot of these, the internet platforms are more worried about people talking about politics than people finding information to kill people or rob them.
Well, hopefully after November 4th or 3rd or whatever, it'll calm down again. It seemed to sort of calm down. It got weird, but still, yeah, hopefully it'll calm down again and people will kind of get a little bit back to what their normal lives are, which is what?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, looking at pictures of cats. Let's see, what else?
Oh, well, hopefully the pandemic is slowing down too after the election.
Well, and there's a lot of talk about, you know, potential vaccines, and even they're even saying that the treatments themselves are just getting better now. They understand more about it, and so, you know, when somebody gets it, they can treat them better. And again, they're working on the vaccine. So I think in you know, a reasonable amount of time, we're going to have a better situation, and maybe, you know, everything will go back to what do we say, the new normal?
The new normal, right? You know, here in Nevada, I mean, Clark County, or actually the state of Nevada, we pretty much flatlined. I looked at the cases and the death mortality rates pretty much, you know, at some reasonable levels that really kind of puts us in line with, you know, regular other illnesses and stuff like that. So knock on wood, you know, hopefully the entire country goes out the same way.
Well, there, you know, we always have progress, so you never know what somebody else is going to come up with next. And the vaccine should be surely on its way, and I hope that we stay flatlined here.
Yeah.
So that we can start opening up. I understand the theaters are starting to open up.
Movie theaters are now open. So, I mean, that's been out probably about a month, almost a month now.
Yeah, well, I don't get out much.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, a big part of our local economy here, say in Vegas and, you know, most of Nevada, are the local bars and that local gaming. And I've noticed that a lot of the local bars that had the gaming right on the bar have now rebuilt their bars, and they've got their machines like out separate and away. So they're back open again, and hopefully servers and people like that will get back to their jobs. And because I've talked to a bunch of realtors who are working with people who maybe got laid off or furloughed or something on their jobs. They were going to buy a house and then they couldn't. And so maybe that'll pick back up again, because it's not only that COVID, we're kind of getting better at addressing the whole coronavirus thing, but a lot of the businesses are adjusting to the new normal, and you know they're able to get back up and start making revenues and providing jobs again. Which, I mean, I saw a graph that our unemployment, I think in April or May, it hit like 30% in the state.
Yeah.
But then 2 months later it was at 15, and I think that was July, and now I'm guessing we're probably I was gonna say we're probably close to half of that again. But again, I think that now, I mean, an example of a local bar was Timbers. They were closed for a long time, and I love their food. I mean, amazing breakfast and stuff. But I got an email from them because I have their app, and it said, "Yeah, we're reopening again." So last night I went to meet an agent to talk about doing some video stuff for her. And I'm looking around going, wow, where'd the machines? Oh, they're over there. And so they're one of those bars that have adjusted and they're back open. They're getting their gaming revenue. So again, I think our local economy is going to start picking up even more and more. And then you got all these huge projects. You got the Circa, you've got Resorts World, you've got the Raiders, you've got the Sphere. I didn't know it, but the Sphere, that big circular entertainment complex they're going to build near the station,
Madison Square
4,000
Garden.
jobs.
Yeah.
4,000 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, wow. So I ran across an article that said that they projected we're going to have here in Vegas 96,000 new jobs by 2026. And then you factor in all the regular retiree traffic we get, right? People retiring from other states. You got the Californians moving in here. I think Vegas is poised for another boom time.
Yeah, for sure. Once we figure out this whole health situation and local and state governors or local officials kind of reopen everything, I think this is going to be really, really booming in the next few years, especially with the mass migration out of California right now. I mean, people are looking more so leave than ever.
So, back to cybersecurity on that front, is the more deals we do, the more risk we're taking in terms of having something happen. So as the economy starts to pick up again, this information is just that much more important.
Yeah, and the National Association of Realtors has cyber insurance available, and we talk about that in class. They've got it for brokerages, which I really think all the brokers should have it. And then if that's not the case, the agents should have it. And it's not that expensive. It was when it first came out, but it's gotten very reasonable now.
Yeah, they're starting to figure out kind of, how the actuaries are. They start to figure out the numbers, and they play it safe in the beginning, but then they start to realize, okay, let's get this realistic so we can sell more or whatever. But yeah, the industry sorely needs, education is one thing, but having the protection of insurance is definitely, I don't know how you could do business without it. Well, it's like driving a car without insurance. It's crazy. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, people like looking in the rearview mirror, saying I should have, right?
Yeah, no, that's a sad part about this whole thing is, most people won't take it seriously until they become a victim.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's too late. It can ruin careers. It can completely ruin a career. And I talked to an agent who had her license suspended for 6 months because she was irresponsible, had a Gmail, it got hacked, and that was that.
Yep.
So it can happen.
Yeah. Well, I think we're on the right track with getting the division to require it for someone to get their license, that they have to have the cybersecurity designation, or at least they have to take the class as part of their pre-licensing. And we're having. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, the guidelines we wrote, to give to the division, say, look, anyone who writes a class on the subject of cybersecurity that's going to qualify for those, that requirement should cover at least a few key areas. That way, we know at least the foundational stuff's being covered. And so students that take these classes can be reassured that, look, I'm going to learn at least the key basics here from this one class. And I know I'll benefit at least that.
And our class is Monday, September 14th from 10 to 1 at 8400 West Sahara. And you can go to b.vegas, BEE.Vegas, and sign up. And you can Zoom in or you can come into the classroom. And we serve free lunch.
If you come into the classroom, lunch will not be to your home.
No, exactly.
I don't know. I don't know how good a scanned sandwich tastes.
All right, everybody.
Yes.
Any last words, Ruth, before we end the show?
No, I just would love everybody to sign up for the class. We found that agents sign up maybe at the last minute. So hopefully that's going to be the case this weekend, because we'd love to have 40 or 50 people there again. And it's such an important subject. So I don't want to spam everybody's email with the sign up email, but please sign up and come in and or Zoom in. You won't regret it, and you'll be able to give value to your customers and clients as well. So there's many reasons to take it. And Jack, you did such a great job.
Well, the feedback we get consistently is, "Wow, I didn't even know. I can't believe, it's so amazing. Everyone needs to take this class." That's the kind of feedback we get consistently.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Right,
that's it.
everybody.
That's it today, everybody. We love you. We hope to see you soon. And Max, thank you so much. Any parting words?
No, that's it, Jack. Thanks. Appreciate coming on. Always a
All
pleasure.
right.
Thanks,
I
Jack.
hope
Thank you.
you take my kind of constructive criticism about these trainings. Let's make it more interesting, because a lot of cybersecurity training that I've experienced have been very boring. So you have the personality to pull it off. So
Oh, he does.
appreciate you
Yeah, I'm a clown for sure.
Yeah,
Right,
but
everybody.
you've got some very interesting things that you brought into the discussion that really wow people, and they're not bored.
Oh, actually, I had one person give me feedback. It was the most interesting CE class they'd ever taken.
Oh, wow. There you go.
Wow.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
new. It's new stuff. It's a frontier.
Absolutely.
Thanks a
All right,
lot,
everybody.
Jack. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good
Bye.
day, and tune in tomorrow morning for Ruth.
Yes, I'll be here. You still here? Yeah, you're still here.
You're still live, Ruth.
Yeah. Here we go.